Hey y'all, it's Cody, and this is
Chris.
We're back together for another episode of Keepers of Nerdom, and today we have an interesting topic to talk about. Should a movie be rated PG-13 or R? And before we really get into that, we need to at least do some backstory, because first off, we were talking about a bit before this and got a little bit of history. So when was PG-13 created?
1984.
Okay, so you need to understand something. There are films before 1984 that were just PG or R. There wasn't an in-between. And so you may be like, well, Mom, Dad, it was PG. That's very different than today. Because Gremlins, if memory serves, was a rated PG film. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I would justify it as R by any means, but it definitely should have been PG-13.
Yeah. But
it didn't exist yet. And so there were films in that era that did not meet this. But another example I think that's fascinating to me was Gone with the Wind. It was one of the first films that, and I apologize for this language use right here, but he says in the film at one point, he goes, frankly, I don't give a damn. And in the day, that was scandalous. Now, today, you watch a PG-13 movie, would that be of any account?
No, I don't think so.
No, you wouldn't even notice it. In fact, they wouldn't even use that as foul language at this point because it's so mild. Mm. Now, if that appeared in a G or PG movie, they might make mention of it.
Yeah.
But we want to read a few things off really quickly from some of the films we just grabbed real fast. We're nerds, and so definitely some nerdy films. We've got ratings here on the back. Just for example, this is hilarious. Apparently, I bought this for $3.99 back in the day. It's probably from that little comic book shop in Moberly next to our college, but it was probably closed by the time you were there.
I think so.
So, Star Wars Episode 1 is rated PG, and there's nothing given on the back of this, but Star Wars Episode 2 is rated PG for sustained sequences of sci-fi action and violence. I want to point something out. This is way after, because this was 1999, I think. Way after 84. PG, guy gets stabbed through the chest. And then a guy gets cut in half. And this is PG.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, great stuff. Like, this is fun. CGI in this got rough. Now, Jar Jar Binks is another story, but we could say that for another time.
We're not gonna get into that.
Okay, that would actually be fun. Have we done that? Did we talk through Star Wars? I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
We'll have to look. Okay. So that'd be fun. All right, another video. So let's read some of the intros, and these are just the stuff from the backs of PG-13 films. The first one you have is...
So we got Batman Year One, and it's rated PG-13 for violence and some sexual material.
And if memory serves, because I watched this a long time ago, that would have been like... It was pretty good, I think, from what I remember, because I kept it. Batman and Catwoman just being flirty, to say the least. I'm being very uncolorful at all. But, like, okay, so that, granted makes sense. And so this is a cartoon. Is it actually meant for kids? Not necessarily. It's more for adults, but it's not going to put itself in the rated R thing. Because the minute you put a movie into rated R territory is then when you are losing some of your audience.
Yeah, there's people that just aren't allowed to watch it.
Yes. And so, and sometimes it's like they can go in with an adult. Is that the case? I don't remember.
Yeah, you have to have adults. Adults at least go in and buy the ticket with you until you're 17. Now,
that breaks my heart that there would be adults that would take their kids, especially younger kids, to a rated R film. And even then, I think should you be taking a kid to a rated R film?
I was taken to watch a lot of them.
I think there may be a small exception to that, but we'll talk about that because I think we have a little bit different perspective, but yet when we were talking earlier, we're pretty close to, I think, the same.
Yeah, I think so.
So what else we got here?
So I got the original Avengers, and it is PG-13 as well for intense sequences of sci-fi violence and action throughout and mild drug references.
Mild drug reference. I'm curious what that would be. Alcohol? Because that's drugs.
No,
so it wouldn't say alcohol.
The descriptors have alcohol separately.
Yeah. I don't know what that would be. Because he's not doing the poison thing. That's Iron Man 3. So it's not Tony Stark. I don't know what the drugs thing's referring to.
It's just drug references, so it's not necessarily them using any, because it'll say drug usage.
Interesting. That's fascinating. All right, go ahead and go to the next one.
Drug reference. Then... I have the Winter Soldier, and this one just says... Oh, it says on the side instead. It's PG-13 for intense sequences of violence. This one doesn't say sci-fi. Gunplay and action throughout.
Which one was this? Winter Soldier?
Winter Soldier.
Okay. So violence, I mean, it makes sense, especially if you've seen that film. It's very intense often, and it's awesome. It's a great film. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about that in our previous film a while back, a year ago, about Marvel movies. What's funny is playing behind us is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was right before it. And Temple of Doom is rated PG, and I'm wondering if it wasn't before the 84. You want to grab that box and see what year the Last Crusade was? So Last Crusade is rated PG-13, but Temple of Doom is
89.
PG. That's 89. So I'm wondering if the other one was before that happened. I don't know.
No way.
That they would wait 5 years? That
5 years
seems like
between
a long
them?
time.
I don't think so.
I doubt it.
I mean, they did a long time between the third one and the best one, but...
Oh gosh, gross. But what's really weird is Temple of Doom is way darker, way creepier. They've got people grabbing their hearts out of their body and then like having them catch fire.
Good scene.
Is it Kalima? Yeah. Kalima. And then the food scene, and it's still rated PG. Like if you've watched Temple of Doom, you know exactly what we're talking about. And every Thanksgiving, that movie happened to come on at my grandparents' house, and we'd watch it, and I don't know why.
Okay. And
all the time I'd turn it on, and guess what scene was on? The food scene. And it's just ridiculous. But
very appetizing. It
was just ew. Chilled monkey brains. I love that guy. So let's talk a little bit about this, because PG-13 is a weird concept, because it feels like there are some movies that can just barely slide into PG-13, and you're like, there's no reason that this should be. And then there's films that are on the other side that you go, pretty sure this should be R.
Yeah.
And you pointed out when we were talking earlier that they're allowed language-wise, what?
In PG-13, I don't know for all the languages. I know they're only allowed so many for different categories they have. But I know that they can use the F word once in a non-sexual manner.
Okay. So they have to be using it as an expletive against some sort of frustration or anger kind of deal.
Or excitement.
And it's just kind of really awkward that's a piece that is now a part of that. But then you get to rated R, and all of a sudden it becomes
there's no limit on language.
Free reign to go wherever you want. Now, so I guess let's just ask the question and talk through this, because I really want to understand, like, we have some perspectives on this. But Chris, for you, why should a film ever be rated R? And let's start there.
I can definitely see sexual content making something rated R, intense language. I mean, language is a whole other topic that we can get into. And
I think we should.
And in today's culture, like, you're gonna hear things.
Yeah.
So, but for intense, when it's used a lot and it's used graphically, definitely see that rated R. But I do think that the rating system is too, in my opinion, too harsh on violence.
Interesting.
Like, if you want to watch an action movie, like, there's gonna be some sort of violence. Or what was there? There were action throughout. Action makes it rated PG-13.
Yeah. And knowing that film, I mean, the action is more visceral than just some random punch that doesn't actually connect kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's one other word that I think is weird for the ratings. Can't remember. Intense scenes,
yeah.
And that one is specifically violence.
So it's an interesting thing you just hit on about violence versus the other things. Mm-hmm. Because it does seem like violence is put on this certain pedestal, but yet what's funny to me in what you were saying and the whole concept is that our culture has allowed more and more language and more like skin showing, mm-hmm. but yet the violence seems to be sometimes either lessening or worsening depending on the film.
Yeah.
And it's strange. It's like it's got this weird category where it's not ever sure what to do with it. It's almost like we don't like to see the violence, but yet we do.
I can definitely see some, like, if you're going to see a Rob Zombie film that just has blood, guts, gore everywhere.
Yeah.
That can get a little excessive. And sometimes even then it gets so excessive that it's ridiculous and not realistic.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that you just pointed out.
Realism.
If it's realism versus not.
Yeah.
So, like...
Which is why I think they have the categories for, like, the sci-fi violence.
Well, but that's what's funny to me. Because you've got a person literally cut in two, falling down a shaft in front of you in episode 1. And, like, granted, it's because of a laser sword, but still, it's... a person's cut in half.
Yeah.
And at the time when the movie was released, Darth Maul wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
He was dead, and you saw it. And it's like they got away with this whole thing of PG in part because they're fighting against droids the entire time, and not very many actual people dying are shown. Mm-hmm. But yet, there are 2 people shown dying at the end of the film, and pretty... not graphic as far as blood, and maybe that's why they got away with it, is there's no blood.
Oh, they definitely get away with more if there's less blood.
It's fascinatingly weird to me.
They also get away with it more if it's aliens with different colored blood.
And that, I think, goes also in part to video games as well, with, like, Halo ratings and whatnot in the recent stuff. Because, they go, well, their blood's blue, so it doesn't count.
Yep.
And ironically, they're not wrong, because they can get a T rating when it used to be a mature.
Yeah.
And so, it's strange. So one of the things I would say, because for me, this is a very important subject. Because as a Christian, I feel like there's only a few reasons to me that, and Chris is Christian too, okay?
Yeah.
But there's only a few times that I feel like a rated R film should be existent. And if you're wanting to just show ridiculous amounts of skin and awkwardness, there's a rating above rated R that it should be.
Yeah, NC-17, just move it up.
And just because it's not for, it's really, quite frankly, I would say it's not for anyone, but that's, Yeah,
but unfortunately, it's been normalized today.
And it is in our culture, but even PG-13 movies, like just in that section alone, there are so many just comedies, quote unquote, that have happened over the years that are just absolutely disgusting between innuendo and just what they show. And you go, I think it's only because they don't have the violence and the language necessarily that they're able to get away with as much as they are.
Yeah.
And so I just personally feel that there's no ever real good reason to have that in your film if you're going to have a film that's supposed to be for audiences in general in any way, and even rated R, because it's frustrating to me. Because especially when rated R happens, it often just gets thrown in.
Yeah. And
for no good reason. And I'll even say this, like there was an older PG-13 movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where there is some skin shown in a very awkward way, but because it's a science fiction film, they get away with it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense.
And I mean, I didn't grow up a Christian, and like this whole rating system, it's so blurred that like,
yes,
I didn't like, I knew that they existed. I didn't pay attention. I just watched movies that seemed entertaining, and no one cared. And it was just like, oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting is so many of us grow up without the concept of this isn't something that we should look at or hear or even potentially see, because we'll talk about each of these sections, especially those big 3. And it does, and you're right. The lines are blurred. It doesn't actually have a clear, direct thing that we understand, because it seems like there's moments where they get away with certain things. Now, another thing. So we talked about that. Language is fascinating to me, because I heard it once said that if you have to use foul language to get your point across, then usually your intelligence is low. And I've always thought that was interesting, because I think that was from an intellectual person giving that concept in a professorship, but yet now we see in our current culture that you can not use foul language and still be an idiot.
Yeah.
But personally, it's like, why does this need to be in there? Why does it have to be? Now, there's moments where I at times whenever a heated fight and someone says something because they're aggravated, I kind of understand to an extent. But whenever it hits me now that PG-13, I don't know when that first hit that they could just drop an F-bomb.
I'm not sure.
I don't know
if that's been the whole time or not.
But it kind of just broke my heart a little bit because it's like we're watching our culture slip in the literal as it's just allowed to have happen. And I'm glad that I don't know that the modern Marvel cinema that's right now, have they dropped one of those at any point? I don't know that they have.
Not that I can think of.
I don't think so, but I'm glad that they haven't because there's no need for it. Have they used foul language at points? Yes. And there's moments where you go, they're literally watching all of their friends die and get snapped away. And you go, I would be angry too. And I think as a Christian, though, it's an interesting thing that we're called to watch what we say, watch what we do, be more Christ-like. And so...
There's bleeped F words in a deleted scene from Iron Man 2.
Really?
Yeah.
From a deleted scene? Okay, but they bleeped them. That's funny. So...
And in Iron Man.
So that's closest
deleted
thing.
Scene in Iron Man... I think deleted scenes from both of them, Iron Man 1 and 2.
So deleted scenes, but they're bleeped.
Yeah.
That's funny. So, just as a Christian, it's a fascinating thing that we should watch our language. And one of the interesting things that we always have to be careful of is in our culture, that if we fill our minds with things, they will come out in our life somewhere, somehow. Mm-hmm. And I found that. I don't know if you have, that the more you watch a certain thing, the more you're tempted into that thing or to say those things. And so I guess that's the cautionary note. And so the reason that we bring up this question is the last category, at least for me, because I think that's the one time where it really makes the most sense to have a rated R film, is violence. And especially, there's one example like the Passion of the Christ. Why is the Passion of the Christ rated R?
Because Jesus dies.
Yeah, it's not from foul language.
Which is a good thing.
It's not from showing too much skin in like an inappropriate way. It's literally because of what they show you from his crucifixion and the
death and blood.
Yeah, the beatings and whipping that he experiences. And I would prefer that because sometimes we don't understand how visceral and real what Jesus did for us was. We go, oh, how cute. He went to the cross for us because we learned it when we were 5. Yeah. And, you're not going to show the 5-year-old the full thing, but...
Yeah, well, it's just like, oh, look, the rainbow after the flood. God saved all these animals from the flood. Don't talk about all the death.
Yeah. And so another thing, like war films. Should a war film really be PG-13? I would probably say no. Because if you're going to show combat in an actual realistic concept, you're going to show limbs.
Yeah, and I can't think of, off the top of my head, any war movies I know of that are PG-13.
I don't know. And I mean, they shouldn't be. Because if you're going to show the reality of war, and what was it? Is it Saving Private Ryan where they have D-Day? I can't remember.
Maybe.
But that sounds right, but I'm not sure. But there's a film that shows D-Day, and it may be Saving Private Ryan. And my understanding is, like, World War II veterans saw that, and it gave them PTSD because it was... to them accurate. Yeah. And I appreciate that because it shows you what was going on the beach of Normandy and the other beaches that they were storming, because there were people with their limbs being blown off and bleeding into the water, and you go to grab your friend, let's say let's go, and you grab what's left of him.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. It's not fun, it's not happy, it's sad, and it's war.
Yeah.
Because I would rather have something like that in a Hollywood fake experience give us the reality of what war is like so we understand it.
Yeah. Learn from the past.
Yeah. Because otherwise you just have stories from Grandpa who's telling you what happened, but not having seen it with your own eyes in some fashion. Yeah. You don't understand how serious and how terrible it actually is. And I think that's the reality. Like we were just talking in class actually, and I didn't even get to share this with you, but Monday we talked a little bit about for Egyptian Nile crocodiles and death rolls that they can do.
Oh yeah.
And so we showed a quick clip of someone, I think from China, doing a show and then putting hand in mouth and it chomped down and then started death rolling. And so it doesn't show a lot of blood, but at the very end of the scene, it shows him trying to get out, but you can see that his arm is twisted the wrong way. And so the students reacted with like, oh my gosh, for several, and then some of them were like, which I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
But it's also, I'm like, I'm glad you guys see this, because then it warns you of, you see an alligator or crocodile, don't go play with it. Don't poke it with a stick.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to experience something that you do not want to experience.
Unless you were raised by Florida man.
And so, for me, I see rated R as, war films, like Passion of the Christ kind of things. I think there's one other possible exception, and I don't know. I'm curious what you think. But what's funny to me, we got one time in the X-Men universe at the time, a film that was rated R. The rest of them, I think, had all been PG-13.
Was that Logan?
It's just Logan. And unfortunately, Logan has language. It has... nature of the character. Well, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing, that I get it, but yet it didn't necessarily need to. I think that movie would have been just as fine in many ways without it. But I also got some of it because
I think it would have lost some of the grizzled old manness.
And I get that. And that's the unfortunate thing, that we've come to that point where we would we have to have that language there. Mm-hmm. And so there's a part of it, but why that story has to be rated R, because they randomly show skin in that for no reason, actually. Like, there's no good reason other than they went, we're rated R, so we can.
I don't remember that scene.
It's towards the beginning. It's pointless. But the reason that's rated R truly is because, and this always bothers me, you have a superhero with claws that can cut through anything in his hands. Mm-hmm. And cartoons he's in them, movies he's in them, mm-hmm. and he's never actually like just doing what you know behind the scenes. And even in comic books, they don't typically show a whole lot of it. Yeah. They just insinuate that, mm-hmm. he totally just killed all those people. Yeah. You got claws coming out of your hands. What do you do with those? If you're actually going to be a superhero, at best you'd be anti-hero if you're going around doing that all the time. The court cases would be real.
What are they going to do?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know how those 3 little stab lines got in you.
What is the American justice system going to do to Wolverine? Healing factor, adamantium bones, and claws.
They'd have to have an adamantium bullet. That'd be the only solution.
That only did so much.
True. That's
been there, done that, tried
it. But it's like, that's kind of the funny thing, that if you're going to actually have a Wolverine focused movie, you almost have to have it rated R to show what he's going to do, because it's going to be disturbing. Mm-hmm. And that's the irony, that if you're going to have someone that focuses in on katana type fights, mm-hmm. or blades out of their hands, and you're going to actually show it realistic, it's gonna have blood, it's gonna have guts, it's gonna have visceralness, and it's an interesting thing to do. And unfortunately, I think we've gotten desensitized to a lot of it, because I don't necessarily also say that, oh yes, we should just have violence for violence sake, but it's like, if you're gonna have Wolverine be a focus of a film, you kind of should show something. Because I'll never forget, it was X-Men, the first X-Men movie. Wolverine's in it. Does he ever cut anybody? I think he does, but they don't show anything.
It's been a long time since I've seen
the movie. I think he might cut Toad, but they don't show anything. He cuts the Statue of Liberty around, and it's like the worst CGI ever. But for the day, it was alright. But yeah, it's like, he's not going to be able to ever do anything, because they can't show him, like, wait, does he stab Magneto at the end? Man, I can't remember. I cannot remember.
I was never a Fox by...
Yeah.
Or a
but Magneto,
by Fox guy.
That's fair. But Magneto doesn't die.
Except for
so Logan. He may have actually stabbed him at the end, but he didn't kill him. And it doesn't show like a lot of blood or anything. Mm-hmm. It's just weird, because like they just can't really show a whole lot of what he's going to do in a PG-13 film. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I think R is a very dangerous thing, and you get into the realm of we can do anything and everything, and as students, we have to have that cautionary note of what we put in our minds, mm-hmm. what we put in our hearts. It comes out in our life. Should everyone at some point in their life see Passion of the Christ? I mean, yeah,
I would recommend it.
It's rated R, but that's going to be put in your heart. And what's going to be put in your heart? That our Savior suffered for us. But it's like, should everyone see Saving Private Ryan or Fury, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Should they all?
I mean, I would recommend for most people to watch Hacksaw Ridge.
Ooh,
that's a war movie, rated R. That movie's fantastic.
Well,
one of my favorites.
It is, and so let's talk about that one, because I forgot about that one. That is a fantastic film because of it's showing a person that because of their faith. Now he is Mormon.
He's a Seventh-day Adventist.
Seventh-day Adventist. Okay, and so it's not quite Christianity. Okay, but you should have to keep that in mind. But there's what he did was pretty crazy impressive, that he kept just bringing people back down off of Hacksaw Ridge,
and it's based on a true story.
Yeah. But again, like, there's a moment in there,
Desmond Doss, that
they show in the military barracks, like, nudity from the one guy that just wants to be naked. You don't see anything super, super awkward, but it is awkward. Yeah. And, I mean, they turn it into a comical moment, because then the drill sergeant comes in and makes him...
He has to go out and do their mud ruck march naked, because he wasn't ready.
And climb through the barbed wire. Yeah. Completely naked, and so you laugh about it, but yet it's that awkward thing of, because it's rated R, they went, you know what, we can get away with this. Mm-hmm. Now I don't know if that situation happened. It may have.
Yeah, that may have been part of the story, but Hollywood always takes their liberties.
Right, and that's the problem with rated R is you get really good story, mm-hmm. but then you also have this extra little side parts issues that happen and come up because they're like, well, we're rated R, we can get away with it. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember the language in that, but I'm sure it's
there was definitely
colorful.
I don't think Desmond ever used any language, but a lot of other people definitely do.
Yeah, but ironically, in the military, from what we understand, it's usually pretty rough and crude to a decent extent. So it's almost like that's actually decently accurate. Yeah. And so it's like, well, what do you do with that? Because it is showing you accuracy, but yet it's making that movie even more awkwardly intense in a different way.
Yeah, and then there's all the death that happened on Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah, there's a lot of limbs and a lot of life lost, and it's intense.
Yeah. And then a lot of, I mean, it's war, so there's a lot of shooting, but there's even a scene where he's, holding a gun up to his dad.
Forgot about that.
Yep.
It's been a while since I've watched the movie. So, overall, I'm glad you brought that one up. I mean, that's another good example. And I think really the big cautionary note is anytime a movie is rated R, but honestly, like, there's a cautionary note potentially for PG-13. Because, unfortunately, we live in a day and age that is Hollywood Christian. No.
Well, but the world isn't.
Exactly that. But it's just that idea. You need to understand that if you're going to watch films, you're going to be exposed to things that at some point, somewhere, somehow will come out in your life. And you may not realize it, but it does have impact on you. And so there's a cautionary note always with this, that even PG-13 and sometimes even PG, was the original Shrek PG? Look it up real quick. Probably. Because it wouldn't surprise me, sadly. But when you pay attention to that film later on in life, as a kid, I watched it and I went, ha ha ha, this is hilarious.
PG, yes.
Okay. But when you pay attention, when you get older, what's actually in Shrek? Number one.
A lot of innuendos.
Yeah, it's chock full.
They call donkey another word for donkey every chance that they can.
Yeah, it's chock full of any and every reference that it doesn't need to have. And so, unfortunately, it's a film it got by somehow. Because because of even just the innuendos, I'd probably say it should have gotten PG-13 somehow. Because it's a kid's movie, but it's not.
Yeah, but things like rating systems, they have to make them, have hard rules. It can't be, subjective. So, if you make sure you follow all these rules, even if you're, skirting up to the line.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And so... That really is the thing, and just keep in mind that when someone, when parents are concerned for you watching a film, there's good reason for it. It's not because that they're wanting to keep you from something epic. It's because they care about you enough to say, I know that this is not good for you, and maybe at some point they've watched that film and realized I shouldn't have watched this. There's many a film that I've watched and went, there was no need to watch this, and in fact now I'm polluted by that film. And that's the unfortunate thing, that we've got to be very careful about the things in this world. So I don't know that I'm going to ask for any comment down below as far as, I don't know.
Comment your favorite rated G movie.
There you go. That's a good one. And that's the reality is we live in the world. We're a part of it, but we also have to be careful of what we fill our minds with. It makes me think too of, we didn't talk about it, but like horror is a whole nother part of the rating system. Forgot about that.
Yeah, frightening scenes.
Yeah. And so like horror films can be intentionally, that's their whole shtick is scary. And like even those, do those have impact on you? Mm-hmm. How so for you?
I enjoy horror movies.
Do you?
Yeah, I like the feeling of being scared.
Okay. So for me, I enjoy it for the moment, but then for the next couple of days, I'm not sleeping well because my brain starts racing.
I don't do like demon horror movies because I'm like, that stuff's real.
Yeah. But that's the reality is like for some of us, it doesn't impact us in the same way, but it does have impact. Mm-hmm. And whether we realize it or not, I played Dead Space years ago and I had a blast with that video game, but it was terrifying. And I didn't sleep well for several weeks because I was playing it for quite a few nights because I couldn't play for very long because it freaked me out. Because every time you go around a corner, something would jump at you and scare you, or the lights would go off. And so I don't typically do horror movies because it's just not a thing that has any value to me. But you enjoy that concept. So, and it's interesting because those can get awkward ratings pretty fast.
Yeah. Just
because of their intensity, but then they often lead to other like skin shown and things like that. And then
but in those movies, the people that are showing skin are normally the first to die.
That's true. That's funny. And so that's just the reality, though. So really, I think the big takeaway from this film is this talk is just be careful and guard your heart, because there's always going to be something that will tempt you. And for each one of us, as we've just pointed out right here, it's different. For me, like horror films I can't handle, and for you, Chris, you're all good. What's a movie type that just makes you uncomfortable? Maybe we should just leave it at that. Do you hit a point with violence where it's just too far?
I mean, yeah, like the intentionally gory movies. Like, I'm not into like the Rob Zombie style movies where just gore for gore's sake. Yeah. And that's just the reality, guys, is please be mindful of what you fill your heart and your mind with, and keep in mind that this whole discussion is really just to point out that there's a few, for at least for me, exceptions. War movies, you're going to show Jesus actually going through his suffering. Yeah, probably needs to be rated R to actually show it. So otherwise, PG-13 is not going to do it justice. Oh, shit. And, you could maybe make the case for the superhero film on the side of, like, violence for certain characters because, that's what they do. And Wolverine, if you're going to focus on him as an actual character, you kind of need to be pretty violent. Otherwise, his powers are useless. Yeah, and it's just, what a lame character to have in a film. Because we always thought he was cool in the films, but yet he didn't really do a whole lot that I remember. Or what he did, they didn't show a whole lot of. Because they wouldn't show, like, the blood, and they're just like, he stabbed him. And you're like, okay. Or they show it from behind, like from a wall, behind the wall that he just stabbed through, and you're like, ooh, he got him. Yeah. And so in Fur, look at that mustache behind us. Holy cow, that is fantastic. All right, but that's a lot of rats. I'm sorry, I can't even right now. It's okay. I've been trying not to watch the movie while looking at the camera. Right. So yeah, just keep in mind, guard your heart. Watch out, because there's always going to be films that are too far. And we want to just say, and especially if you're not at the age to watch a war film that's rated R, don't.
it's not for you. And it's okay to wait, because that will stay with you. Those things, even if it's not an actual battlefield that you're on, those things stay with you. So guard your heart, guard your mind. We've been Cody
and Chris.
Keepers of Nerddom. Take care.